Okay, folks, I guess now's a good time to get started here. I think a few more people are going to be signing on. First of all, I'd like to start off by saying thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join me today to learn a little bit about BigPicture and what it does and how it may help you. My name is Jackson, and I am the product coordinator for BigPicture here at Palisade Corporation. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Palisade, we are a global company with our headquarters based here in Ithaca, New York, where it is currently snowing right now. Last year we celebrated our 30th anniversary, so just to kind of give you a brief little background about us, that we are the developers of the leading risk and decision analysis add-ins for Excel. So instead of the name of Palisade, you may be more familiar with us because of our products At Risk and the Decision Tool Suite. However, today we are here to learn about Palisade's BigPicture. BigPicture is currently in its beta stage, which means that we are actively looking for feedback. So with that being said, I encourage you wholeheartedly to go ahead and send me an email after we're done with the webcast, or if a colleague of mine contacts you in regards to the webcast, please feel free to give us any feedback you can as to some of the things that you are experiencing, or maybe some of the things you'd like to see added. I will say it really does truly help to get your feedback now prior to the official rolling out of this product, because I've personally witnessed a customer's suggestion actually get implemented within a week's time. And although it may not make it immediately out to the public released beta, it does make it into our in-house beta that we are currently testing. So, BigPicture, which I'm using right now, is a diagramming, mind mapping, and data exploration add-in for Excel. It sounds like a mouthful, but it's actually very simple to use and understand, and I'm hoping that at the end of this demonstration you'll feel the same. All it means is that with BigPicture you can create visual diagrams in Excel to represent complex ideas or problems, as you'll see when I go over our strategic planning and our slideshow examples. BigPicture can also be used to represent some form of data, and I'll demonstrate how BigPicture utilizes the diagramming capabilities to make sense of data when I show you a couple of data map examples and our organizational chart example. BigPicture takes advantage of the fact that people are visual animals, and we tend to retain better when we see something visually, and we also tend to grasp relationships better. When it's presented in some form of a visual. Visuals just allow us to kind of take that photographic memory type thing instead of just looking at a lot of data in a spreadsheet. And as I go through today's demonstration, you'll notice that I'll refer to these shapes, these different shapes here, as topics, and the lines in between them we call connectors. So when you hear me talk about topics, I'm talking about the different shapes and the connectors in between. And as you can see, BigPicture resides in a comfortable environment, Excel, and it has its own tab up top and its own ribbon with icons that represent various commands that we'll go through. We won't cover all of them. This is really just a webcast that'll touch base on a few things and just demo some of the things that BigPicture can do for you. Obviously, this just scratches the surface, but this may at least spark some initiative on your end to see how you could apply some of these examples with your own data. And the examples that I'm going to show you today, with the exception of this one in front of us and the one that I'll do as a freeform map, They are all included in BigPicture, in the BigPicture software. And if you don't have the software installed already, feel free to go to our home page, which is palisade.com, and then right in the headline section there's a Meet BigPicture link here, and that'll take you to a spot where you can actually download the software and have access to all of these example files. And if you come up with an idea as to what kind of other example files may be beneficial to other customers and you want to send it our way, absolutely, we'll take a look at it, maybe tweak it and include it in our final release. And I also want to point out, obviously I'm going to be touching base on a lot of things today, but we also have a help menu here. And under the help menu, if you click this help icon, it will bring you to our BigPicture manual. The manual is stored online and it is updated on a regular basis, so as things change or are added, we try to update it. If you notice that something is missing or you would like a better explanation of something, feel free to send me an email, let me know, and I will see to it that the appropriate people handle it on our end. So that just kind of covers the basics there. So let's go ahead and get started here. Under the Help menu, those example spreadsheets that I told you we're going to cover today are located right here. So we're going to open up an example spreadsheet. And when you open up this spreadsheet, you'll see that we sort our example files by specific business areas or by highlighted product features. And by the end of this webcast, you'll be more familiar with what a data map is and some of the other terminology that's used here. And for this first example we're going to go to our business planning examples here. And these are basically all of the business planning examples that we have here are all taken from Harvard Business School case studies of just interesting strategic and other planning challenges that businesses face. So essentially, one of our members of our team here read through the case study and then created this map. And these particular examples will not use any data, rather it's just a great illustration of how BigPicture's diagramming, or what we call mapping, capabilities can be used to create visual representation of a fairly complex problem, but in a qualitative way. And I assure you, I will most certainly be covering some examples that show off the data linking abilities of BigPicture. But for now, I just want to cover some of the basic mind mapping and diagramming techniques. And for those of you who are familiar with strategic planning, mapping is a common application for strategic planning. If you haven't heard of mind mapping, a mind map is just a diagram that's used to organize information. Typically, mind maps are based with a topic in the middle and then items spoken off that individual topic in the middle. But this example is more showing a diagramming example versus a true blue mind mapping example. So, in this example, a large rental car company called Beacon has acquired a smaller car sharing company called Village Car. So imagine Beacon being like an Avis or a Hertz, and Village Car is like a Zip car or other local car sharing services. The two companies have different business models, different cultures, and different strengths and weaknesses. So if you're Beacon, there's a lot of things to consider. What do you do about the name and the image? How will customers of each company react to the deal? Will profitability be improved? And previously, these kinds of discussions typically involve, people in a room jotting down notes in PowerPoint or Word or maybe even on yellow legal pads. But with BigPicture, you can map out this kind of challenge in a clear visual way to help both the user and others understand it. So here you can see three options being considered by Beacon for how to integrate the acquired Village Car company. They could go for a full integration, meaning, say, the village car name is gone and Beacon takes over all operations. They could go for a hybrid integration, keeping the name but absorbing village car systems into the corporate parent, or they could go for village car remaining completely independent. And you may have noticed as I clicked on these little green circles here that the other branches immediately collapsed. This is a feature of BigPicture. What this is our single expand option, which is highlighted here at the top in the ribbon here, and what it does is it allows you to just focus on one thing at a time. So instead of having this entire map completely sprawled out, you can take time to just click through and focus on individual things. So say you were interested in seeing the attributes and the goals achieved. If you wanted to just open two of these branches, you can shift click on this green circle and it'll open up just those two. And if you wanted to add the customer impacts, again, you could shift click and open up there. So then these would be all of the full integration attributes, customer impacts, and goals achieved. Now, another option that you may be interested in doing would be to go ahead and open up here. We open up these two things and just have the attributes. So I'm shift clicking on these so you could see some of the attributes, just the attributes separately, expanded out, where you can kind of weigh out the pros and cons of them. And based on the fact that earlier I mentioned that humans are visual animals, there's a situation where the slightest things, such as this negative sign or this plus sign here, can imply something without having to spell out that this could be a negative consequence or this could be a positive consequence. And here, this is a connector, and that negative sign is just simply a label on the connectors. And you can change these connector labels by going to the connectors here and do an add label and then change in here. So you can actually change them here. You could do a custom label and, say negative here. And with these, you can say that you want those labels to be rotated so that it goes along the line instead of perpendicular to the line. You can change the color of these connectors by simply right mouse clicking and choosing an Excel feature, which is just the outline feature. So maybe you want to have these red here just to emphasize the fact that they're negative situation, or maybe the positives you want to go ahead and whoops, I selected the wrong one here. You want to go ahead and make those green to show that it's a positive situation. So again, we're visual, so you can make these subtle changes without having to spell it all out. You can also change the font and the color of your custom labels as well. And this is just showing you some of the ways that you can just quickly change a few things in your diagram. And what we envision this tool being helpful for, like if you're a user of Decision Tool Suite, we picture this as being the stage before you do all your modeling. So when you're brainstorming and you're trying to map out what kind of model, this is our problem, how are we, what are some of the things we need to consider when we build our model and collect our data and organize our data. This is what we picture using these strategic planning examples for. So another idea would be to be able to send this out to your team members ahead of a big meeting. Maybe you want to discuss these different options as far as what are we going to do? What is Village Car going to do when we acquire Beacon? You could send this out to your team members. They could step through it a little bit, kind of get themselves, in the same mindset to figure out what you're going to be discussing at the meeting. And then maybe they want to create their own recommendation for you. And maybe they want to, maybe in this situation they think a hybrid example is best, so they could actually create a separate one here. So this is just a quick example of this particular strategic challenge. Obviously, different people will certainly map it in different ways. And the beauty is you're going to see now how easy it is to create one of these maps. So I'm just going to click on an extra worksheet here and get started. So say we are thinking about a different business location, where to locate in different business location. So I want to map out some of the challenges that could be associated with that. I simply go to this new topic and say add a new unconnected topic. And I will type in where to locate a new plant. And maybe we've thought of a few things ahead of time here, such as, some things that we may have to consider. Maybe your team has already sat down and listed a few, such as cost of labor. Oops, my fingers are not working so well. Here we go, cost of labor, or maybe some tax incentives. Maybe there's some tax incentives provided by local government, or maybe there's an ease of access. Maybe you're concerned about how you're going to get the finished goods out and how you're going to get the supplies in. Maybe there's an ease of access situation you want to look into. Now, if you noticed, when I was adding these new topics, all I did was simply mouse over the existing topic, wait for one of the red squares to show up, and then I drew out from it. If I want to delete one of these, all you do is select it and hit the delete button. Now say we had 11 of these ideas written down, or what have you. Maybe we had them in a spreadsheet. So I'm just going to retype these here to demonstrate. Tax incentives, ease of access, economic status of the area, maybe. So say we had these 4 things. Instead of individually drawing them all out, I'm going to delete these off here and show you another easy way in BigPicture that you can do that. I can click on this topic here, right mouse click and choose Add Children, and BigPicture will actually go out and say, is this the column of data that you would want? I would like these 4 things as children. And if you notice here, it says, if desired, press Shift OK to enter number of cells per topic label. So say you had some other notes in additional columns, you could select multiple columns here and it would display what was in this cell and the cell and the cell in one topic. For this simple example, I'm just going to select these 4 and I'm going to click OK, and it will automatically generate the children topics of these. Now, if we want to change the color of some of these, like, maybe we want to have the cost of labor ones all be green, I can shift click on these and go to see this drawing tools tab up here. If I go up here, I can change the fill color of these to whatever I would like. Maybe I want to add some gradient texture to it. You can customize these in whatever way you would like. Maybe there's some effects that you'd like to add, or so maybe we move these out here and we want to change maybe the shape of these. Again, I can either shift click, or using the BigPicture selection tool, which is located here, this gives you some options. I can either select this particular topic and the children. I could select only the children of the selected topic, or I could select only the connectors. So if I wanted to change the color of the connectors between selected topics, I could do that as well. For this example, say I choose select the children, it'll automatically select these. So if we had multiple children out there, if we had 10 of them, we wanted to change them all to circles, we could do that in one fell swoop. So here, I'm going to go back up to that drawing tools, click on Edit Shape, and I'm going to change the shape to an oval. So that just shows you, again, one of the different ways. Maybe I would like to change the location of these topics, and I would like them automatically lined up together, maybe center aligned. Again, we go up to this Drawing Tools tab here, and then you just click on this Align here. And this is a native Excel command, but it recognizes these topics, so it'll align them based on center. Another option you could do is within BigPicture, if you wanted to clean this up a little bit with very little effort, if we had things all scattered about here, I can click on this Auto Arrange button, and it's going to say, do you want to automatically arrange these topics? And I can click yes, and it'll automatically clean up our map for us, or our diagram. And if I collapse these, it will automatically clean it up. And again, if you're more into doing a true mind mapping example, you can extend out on all axes here. And depending on what the shape is, you may have more than just 4. So if I change this, more than 4 connection points here, if I change the center one to, say, I believe a circle or oval, if I can here, you'll see, oh, we have some additional points that you can extend out from. So you can see just by me doing this, you can see how it takes on more of that standard mind mapping visual that some of you may be more familiar with. Now, say we wanted to, speaking of mind mapping, typically with mind mapping, they're a little bit more whimsical. So I did notice here, if you notice this shape, when we change it, it got a little smaller. So I'm just going to extend that out here. So maybe you want to do some whimsical things, add some pictures instead of just doing colors and special shadowing and highlighting. Maybe we want to add some pictures. So maybe for tax incentives, we may want to add a $sign or something. What you can do is right mouse click, and you can do a few things. You can either do add picture here, and this will put a placeholder there for BigPicture to know this is where you would like it located. And we can change the picture and go here and say $sign. And what this is going to do is this is going to go out to the web, and it's going to look and say, oh, these are these are some of the available ones. Obviously, you'll see there are some. You want to make sure you're complying with licensing rules. So just for sake of demonstration purposes, I'll use one from the web. But you may also pull up some pictures from your own computer or your own database. So I just added this little picture here, and maybe it doesn't quite show up because of the light gray background. Again, you can right mouse click, and instead of going up to that Format tab, we can just go to this Fill tab right here and change it to a different color. Also, that Fill tab comes in handy, and I'll show you why here. Another way to add pictures is I can right mouse click here, choose Fill, and choose Picture here. So for ease of access, maybe a road picture may be more appropriate. I can select this road picture here, and I can resize this, and it'll make the entire topic a copy of that picture. It'll fit that picture into that shape that you already have set up. So this allows you to do some more whimsical things with it. Now, maybe we don't like where ease of access is located in this topic. While that topic is selected, just go to your typical Home tab, which if you're familiar with Excel, you're familiar with standard text editing things, or even in Word, these are set up just like this in Word. You can say, I would like it centered, I'd like it to be complete in the middle or at the top. Maybe you want to change the font of it. You can change the font of it, you can change font size, you can change font color. So you can do a variety of things without having to go back and highlight the text and edit the text that way. It automatically knows I am editing this text here. You can also use your standard keyboard commands such as underline. So if I did Control U, it'll underline that text, or Control I, it'll italicize it, or Control B, it'll bold it. So again, these are just some of the quick things that you can do to customize a map to make it a little easier on the eyes for you. So you can also, I guess one other thing I could show you is just doing in this formatting things here. Maybe you want to do some special effects to it, you know, a beveled effect or a glow effect. You can do that. Like maybe there's one particular one that you want to focus on more than the others. You can add different effects to bring it forward or edit it a bit there. Or if you wanted to change the size of multiple ones all at once, you select them all and then just adjust one of them, and it'll adjust the ones that are selected. You can also use the same, you know, you could use your BigPicture selecting tool and change your size by specifying it here. So there's a variety of different things, but don't be afraid to explore and try things out while you're creating these different diagrams. So I think this pretty much takes care of just this is what we would call like a free-form map. Basically, it's not linked to any cells or data with the exception of these here. And, you know, one of the other things that we can add here, so maybe instead of economic status, you know, we say environmental. Like, are there any issues as far as having to worry about different things we have to adhere by? If I change it here in the cell, it'll automatically update here as well. And when you're in BigPicture, there are a few other things that you can feel free to explore. That would be the outline pane here and the topic pane here. This is also another way that allows you to add pictures or make notes or do some labeling here. So if I click here, the label will say this is referring to this Excel range here. If I wanted that particular label to do all four of these, I could do that and it'll update automatically. So feel free to explore the topic pane and the outline pane as well. So I kind of ran through that really quickly, and just so you know, this is being recorded and you can feel free to access it afterwards. I'll post it on our Palisade YouTube channel. So if I went through it too quickly, feel free to go back and watch again or contact me if you have questions. But let's move on to maybe some data examples. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this one here, say don't save, and I'm going to go to a data map example, and I'm going to show the power generation example here. Go ahead and minimize that one here. So for this example, we're going to show how BigPicture generates what we call a data map. So we just saw a freeform map. Now we're going to look at a data map that BigPicture will generate from a set of data. And the data set in this example lists information about major electric power plants in the Midwest. Things like, you know, the plant name, the operating company, the primary energy source, the capacity in megawatts, and it also includes some website information. And you'll see that BigPicture will let us create maps to view this information in a variety of ways. So You have been exposed to the connectors drop-down icon here, the outline and topic panes, viewing, the single expand, the auto arrange. Now let's go ahead and take a look at a data map. So if I click on data map, it's going to bring up this dialog, and within this dialog, this is where we essentially tell BigPicture what we want to see from our data. So in this particular example, we would like BigPicture to take a look at this range of data. So just like a standard regular Excel range selection, we're going to go ahead and have that data selected, and we would like it to create group topics for state and primary energy source. And then in the end topics, we would like it to have the plant name, the operating company, and the capacity. And I just want to point out, while I'm on the screen, this little check mark. This little check mark actually tells BigPicture to do something that's pretty impressive. It rolls up the calculation of capacity throughout the different group topics. So it'll roll up the capacity information throughout the energy source topic and the state topic. So let's create a map so you can understand, take a look at what I'm talking about when I say that. So it just created this map. Basically, it went through all our data, and it said I want to find all of the power plants in Illinois, whether they're coal, gas, nuclear, and which plants they are. So basically, it sorts your data for you. And if you notice, again, I'm in single expand, so as I click out, the other ones are collapsing down. I could deselect single expand, and then as I click out others, they will remain open. So say I'm looking at this coal capacity here for Minnesota. You'll see if you take the capacity here and you add up these 4 plants' coal capacity, it will roll up that calculation and add it up and put it here. Then it will take these 3 items here, coal, gas, and nuclear, and roll those up because those are all referring to the energy production in Minnesota. And then BigPicture will say, okay, how much do we have for Midwest altogether? It'll take Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, add up all those values and roll it up together here. Now, just like in the Freeform map where you saw that I had changed a value in one of the cells, if I go back to this Sherburne County coal plant, power plant, and say they were shut down for I don't know, safety reasons, I can go back here to Midwest, go to Sherburne, change it to 0, so they didn't produce any energy, they've been closed down. If I go back here, you'll see the end table will automatically update, as will all of the roll-up calculations. So it does it immediately. And the beautiful thing about having these end tables is that you can do sorting within the end table. So if you wanted to sort on capacity, you just double-click and it'll sort on capacity. Also note that we have these links here. These are the website links. So maybe you're curious as to why Sherburne County's power plant was closed. You want to find out a little more information. If I go ahead and click on this, it will bring up that website here automatically. So it's all linked together, and that website information was found in the data right here. So this is that link that it called up right there. So maybe you're looking at this and you're saying, but I'm not really concerned about what state produces what. I'm more concerned and interested in finding out how much total coal we have, coal energy production we have, or to compare them amongst the others. If you go back to your data map dialog and pull that up, to change the order of those grouping topics, all you have to do is select here and move it up or down, whichever where you're going. Obviously, you could have multiple group things here. And if we had other items to sort on, what you could do to add them is just simply double-click, and it'll produce a drop-down menu to show you what grouping topics are available. Obviously, in this data set, we have very few columns of data, so we just have these two categorical variables. So the other thing I wanted to show is that in the reason why those links were available is from this markers tab. We specify here for BigPicture to add those markers to each of the end topics, and we say that we would like it to be a hyperlink marker type. So that's where that came from. Another question that may come up is, how did we get the tables versus individual topics? That is here, so we can say display end topics in tables. Another option is to display end topics as individual topics. Tables seems to be the way that we prefer to set things up, just for ease of sorting and visualizing and comparing, and you're able to pack more information into a table instead of having a lot of individual topics extended out. So I am going to create this map, and I'll rewrite over it so we can see the grouping based on energy type versus on the state. So if I expand out this coal, now it'll break it down by state here. And again, if I look at Minnesota, there's our Sherburne one right there. And again, it tallies everything up because of that little check mark that we asked to roll it up. So that pretty much covers this example here. And obviously, you can use BigPicture's data mapping capability for a variety of different types of data. Maybe it's inventory data or insurance claims or pharmaceutical data, what have you. But I'd like to actually show you, normally I would show an NFL example, but today I think I'm going to show you the Premier League example, because obviously we've had oops, it opened up on my other screen here. We've had a flurry of changes in the NFL this week with free agency and everything. So today I'm going to show you our Premier League players example. So for those of you that are familiar with NFL football, this is actually an example of the English Premier Football League, which is soccer in the United States. So this workbook illustrates how to use BigPicture to generate the data map for all players in the English Premier League. And the data to be mapped for each player is team, their ranking, their fantasy value, points, their position, what their nationality is, their salary. And you may have heard me just say their fantasy value. Basically, this is the English Premier League fantasy football example is more accurate, where people set up their own team comprised of players that they select from any EPL team. So you start with a team budget, and then you buy players for your team. And the price of each player is set by market demand. So as players cost more, there's some sacrifices that the coach or manager of the team would have to make as far as other players. So during the season, each player gets points for goals and assists and playing a full game and things like that, and loses points for things like receiving a yellow card or a red card. And your team wins in a given week when your team scores more points than your opponent. So for anyone out there who plays fantasy football, NFL fantasy football, I could certainly see setting up a data file very similar to this. And players can be added or removed from a fantasy team by buying and selling them for their market price. So some wheeling and dealing, I suppose you could say. So let's go ahead and open up that data map dialog that we just saw with the power plant example. And you may have noticed that there were some pictures in that last example. And I just want to show you ahead of time before I produce this map how BigPicture knows what pictures to put in there. In the last example you had seen, little icons of the states, and then you had seen, a gas burner and power plant image. Here we are telling BigPicture to add pictures to the topics based on their team, so match based on their team. So if I go to this folder here that we specify, I'll open it up here. If I open it up here, you'll see we're looking at the Photos folder in the Examples folder of BigPicture Palisade program files. And this is saying we want BigPicture to look in the Premier League folder and then match the name of the file, the picture file, with the name that shows up in the column titled Team. And you can change these, so maybe in the NFL example, we have a conference picture for AFC or NFC. You can actually click on it and specify where that folder is. So we'll go ahead and close that. And one other thing I just want to point out in this dialog while I'm here, previously we had done in the energy example the total value. So we used this roll-up category and we did the total value that would roll up through. Here we're specifying that we would prefer to have the average. And to change this, you can simply double-click on here and choose total, average, min, or max. So for this example, we're going to do average. One of the other key things I want to point out while I'm in this dialog is this little check mark right here. This check mark is basically telling BigPicture, I would like to roll up the end topic count to the group topics, and I'd like to label it number of players. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to count the number of people, or in this number of players for each team for this example. So if I go ahead and create the map, again, it's going through and it's sorting out, okay, based on the grouping of team rank, it's going to go through and average out the points for us. It's going to put in the pictures for us. It's going to calculate the end table for us and give us just a way to kind of easily look at the data here. So here we have Group 1, which is the 1st through the 5th. They have an average of 81 points. Here's their salary and their total number of players. And you can see when you look at this, interestingly enough, and not surprisingly, the first place to the 5th place team has a significantly higher average salary than those in the 16th through the 20th. And if I expand these out, just like in the last example, it'll have the categories here, the topics here, and it'll roll up the values. So this team had an average of 93 points, this one was an average of 78, average of 88, and it'll take these calculations and average all the way through. And it'll also do the average salary, and if I click out here on Manchester City, here is the end table, and in our data dialog I didn't actually point out the fact that we actually requested for a few different things in our end table. We specified position, but we also have this detail view. And essentially, if I count the number of players here, that will equal 24. So that's what that little check mark was saying. Basically, I want you to count how many individuals are showing up in this view. So it'll, again, calculate up the number of players and do the roll-up throughout. And if you look here, we can sort on salary. We can, and if you obviously double-click again, it'll sort in the opposite way. So this gentleman here is obviously the highest paid, and he has a the highest value, appropriately so, and these show the number of points that he's had. What's interesting is if you were to look at the points, here's another gentleman who had 180 points, yet gets paid 90,000 versus 220, and only has a value of 5.3 versus a value of 6.8. So this allows you to kind of just easily look through your data, scan through your data. One of the questions I've had in the past is, will BigPicture only calculate out data that is set here? And the answer to that is BigPicture will actually just take the value of whatever ends up in there. So if you have intricate formulas in here, or even some simulation results, you can link just to that cell and it'll take care of that. And maybe there's a formula that uses a lookup table. As long as the formula is an Excel formula and can produce a value for Excel, then that value is also transparent to BigPicture. So that pretty much covers data maps. I'm going to move on to organizational charts here for those of you that are involved in human resources, or maybe you have a small company and you want to create an org chart based off of your data. We're going to go ahead and open up one of those. So let's go to organizational chart, and for time purposes, instead of doing the simple org chart and then going to the bigger one, I am going to go straight to the big one. And you may have noticed throughout this webcast that every time I open up a Palisade example file, that we typically have a description on the first page, and then our first worksheet. Then on the second worksheet is typically the data or a map or what have you. So in this case, here is the explanation of what we're going to essentially walk through now. And these are all great tools to go through when you're trying to learn big picture and get some ideas. This will walk you through some of the items that you may be interested in. So let's go ahead to the Employees tab. In this data set, you'll see we have employee name, employee title, supervisor title, phone numbers, location, etc. And we want to create an org chart. In order to create an org chart, we need to let BigPicture know that there is a linkage between two columns. And you may have noticed up here we have the data maps that we just went through, and there's a light gray bar here and a linked map and org chart. These two are very similar to one another. Essentially, both of these are based on the fact that it is a data map that has two columns in the data set that identify a parent-to-child relationship, so between the topics in the chart. So in an org chart, this parent-to-child relationship is determined by each person's title. So in this particular example, if a person they have their title and they say, my supervisor's title is systems lead, then we need to make sure that in column B there is somebody that is the systems lead. So if I scroll down here, I gotta see where the systems lead is, right here. So Patrick Merrill is the systems lead. So if I have a supervisor title, it needs to be as an employee title. So someone has to own that title. When BigPicture gets to the point where there is no title associated with a particular employee, that is the flag for BigPicture to know this is the king of them all. This is the CEO, this is the president, this is the root topic. So you'll see as I present this that the root topic will be Mr. Jeffrey Wiggins. So let's go ahead and go to our org chart dialog. And if you look here, again, similar setup to what you just had with that the data map dialog with the selecting of the range, except now we have this here, and this is what I was just talking about as far as having to make sure we set up some sort of linkage, so an employee title to a supervisor title. So we do that here. We're saying that these are the columns that we would like to display in the different topics. Again, if we want to add more information, just simply double-click and it'll provide a drop-down menu. So maybe you want to do, maybe you want to add the phone number, and you can add the phone number in here. If you decide you don't want that, just simply select it and choose the X here. It'll remove it from the list. If you want to change the order of these, just like in the data map, you can click up or down, etc. Again, pictures, the same as the data map, it's going to look out into that folder, and in this situation it's going to match based on the employee name. So it'll look and find a picture named Amanda Nelson based on the employee name, and when it populates her topic, it'll populate the picture in it. Markers, you'll notice when I produce this org chart that we're going to add these markers to each employee's topic. And the markers are essentially just little additional links located to the bottom right of the topic. And previously, we were only allowed to have one note, but recently we have made the capability based on a customer's feedback to have multiple notes as well. And here you can say, maybe I want to have another note based on a lot of this is already used, but maybe you want the phone number hidden or something. You can add the phone number here and say that you would like that done as a note. So again, same thing. You can delete them off if you would like. Then there's also a calculations tab. And similar to the data map, we have the roll-up capability. So this little tiny check mark will roll up the information for the salary and head count. And this is specifying to BigPicture how you would like it displayed. So why don't I go ahead and create a chart before we forget about all those options that I just pointed out, because again, I'm running through these a little quickly. So here is the start of our org chart. You may be looking at this saying, but there were a lot more employees listed in the data set. Again, we have this auto arrange and single expand on, so that when I click out here and I decide to go to Loretta Smith, it'll automatically collapse them. Again, if I choose to shift click, I can go ahead and shift click and it'll keep those all open at the same time. Or maybe I would like to click out here on Patrick Merrill and shift click all of the people underneath Mr. James Larson here. Again, just like the data maps, everything is linked together. So say Miss Loretta Smith here is no longer in San Francisco. If I change her information here in the data set to say Seattle, and I go back here, it will update automatically. Maybe there's a bigger change. Maybe Lorraine Godfrey is no longer going to work underneath Thomas Olson. Maybe she's going to work directly under James Larson. And maybe she's not going to work in New York, but maybe she's going to work in San Francisco. To make something of that type of change, we would go to the employees, look up Miss Lorraine Godfrey. So maybe her new title is Interface Lead, and she is going to report directly to the Director of Software Development, which is James Larson. What I recommend doing when dealing with linkage, I recommend using the standard copy and paste. Then there's no typos, there's no extra spaces, what have you. So if I go here, just do Control-C for copy, go back down to Lorraine Godfrey, Control-V for paste, it'll tell BigPicture to create the org chart based on her reporting to James Larson instead of reporting to her previous Thomas Olson. So again, we can change our thing here. Maybe it's San Francisco, and maybe her rating has changed. for something like this, because BigPicture needs to essentially redraw the org chart, we just go up here, go to org chart, and we just say update chart. And so it's going to go back through and say, okay, what changed? What are we going to move around? Oh, we are going to move around Little Miss Lorraine Godfrey. And here she is. She has been moved. Her marker has changed to number 8 to represent that she is has a different review value, and she is no longer reporting underneath Thomas Olson. She's directly under Larson. Some of the other things that you may take note of is if we look at this summation symbol, this is the information that we told BigPicture to include in the org chart in that calculations tab. Essentially, we want to know how many people are underneath him. He has 3 people underneath him with a total salary of $252,700, and his salary is $106,250. And same thing with, if we look at James Larson, we can see his information here as well, which will include the total head count of the 9 people underneath him. Now, say Mr. Merrill's value has changed, his salary has changed for whatever reason. We can go to Patrick Merrill and change his salary, say, just to make it drastic so that we can see the difference here, 10,000. When I go to org chart, it will automatically update in those calculation tabs as well. Maybe we have a situation where, actually let me, maybe our CEO wants to have a report of all of this. If I go to org chart and do create report, I don't want to have a PDF right now. It's going to initialize the report. And here we see the report, and on top of that, what BigPicture does is it adds those columns that we told it to roll up together. It adds those columns here so that you can see the head count underneath these individuals, their total salary. You can see Patrick Merrill's information was updated here as well. You can also see that Lorraine Godfrey is reporting under James Larson. And maybe you don't like having all these extra grids here. That's a simple change of being in Excel and just remove the grid lines. Maybe it's a little easier on the eyes that way. So that shows you a quick and dirty way of how BigPicture can just quickly produce these org charts versus having to go back through. If someone like that Lorraine Godfrey example existed, you having to go back through, redraw, reconnect, relink. This does it for you. And this information was also pulled in from the Notes tab. So if we look here, oops, if we look at these individual Notes tabs, which I'm not sure why my cursor is not changing here, but I will look into that. It'll actually populate that information there as well. So I'm going to close out of this guy. Say don't save, and just quickly show a slideshow example in the last couple minutes here. Excuse me. For the slideshow example, and again, I'm going to run through this really quickly here. Say we have this freeform map that we put together, the strategic map that we put together, and we want to have our meeting, and these are the things that we're going to cover. It doesn't have as much information as the example we may have looked at earlier that had the car acquisition in there, but we want our members to walk through this and understand it a little bit before we meet. We can actually send this file to them, and they can hit this play button, and it would be a personalized slideshow. So we can put up these boxes, and you can edit the way these look as well. And if I just click through these next slides, it'll actually say, you know, based on the number mailed and the response rate, the company will observe the number of responses. It'll actually walk the viewer through, step by step, the things that you may want to discuss and your logic on how you set up your strategic map. So this may be good in a situation where you're a consultant and a customer comes to you with some problems and you come up with some ideas and you say, this is how we want to handle it. This would allow you to walk through the example with them versus putting them in front of a map like this straight up without any explanation. This would allow them to have a little bit of hand-holding throughout. And to create these slideshows, it's a matter of simply using this slideshow example, this slideshow tool right here, and this is where you can specify that you want these items on the first slide. And maybe on the fourth slide we want to have all of the previous example slides here. So this is where you would do the addition of different topics that you would like to include. And I truly apologize for completely rushing through the slideshows there. I must have over-explained on some other ones because usually it's timed pretty good here. But anyway, this pretty much wraps up the webcast for today. I don't want to hold you longer than an hour here, but as you can see, BigPicture does let you represent virtually any kind of problem in a creative visual way. Great for brainstorming, strategizing, communicating, but also good to do just some visual maps and also help you look through some data, whether it be about org chart calculation data, or maybe it's like the power source example, maybe it's going through stuff like that. And of course the slideshow feature here, although I went through it very quickly, could also be a great tool for your team. So while I'm here, I'm just going to quickly pull up my information so that you can have it. So I'll zoom in here with the Excel zoom in tool, and just so that it's nice and clear for you. Essentially, you can reach me at mjackson@palisade.com or bigpicture@palisade.com. I have access to both, and please send feedback as to things you'd like to see, things that may or may not be working. Again, we are in beta right now, and if you come across something that doesn't seem quite right, please flag it for us. We obviously are testing here, but depending on what environment you're in, whether you're Excel 2010 or 2013, it may not show up on our end, so we want to make sure that we get all our bases covered. So please, please, please do not hesitate to contact me directly if there's anything specific that you'd like some help with. If I can't answer the questions, I will absolutely try to funnel it through the proper channels on this end. So I think this about wraps it up. Can remote data be used from, say, MS Access tables linked to Excel? I see a question here. Absolutely. If it can reside in Excel, you can have it be accessed from BigPicture. So basically what you would do is you would use this Data tab in Excel, link your data from Access, I think was the particular one you just specified, or maybe there's something from the web. In fact, I have some colleagues of mine in London who actually are working on a pretty fun example for the London Underground, whether or not the trains are on time or not, and it's based on updating data from the web that's actively updated on a regular basis. You could also maybe create a data file that takes a look at your stock portfolio and populates cells based on the active data that's there as well. So great question, very good question. Maybe there's barrel prices for oil or what have you, or maybe there's an example file you could do with mortgage rates. So a variety of different applications. And does anyone else have any other questions? I don't want to keep anyone too much longer here, but if you have any other questions, feel free to send me a note, and we can take it from there. And again, thank you for joining me today. Always nice to get the word out there. And I don't see anyone typing anything up, so I'm going to go ahead and close out the webcast. But again, please don't hesitate to contact me. Appreciate your time. Bye now.